Good evening and good to have you with us on the 8 p.m. edition of the Urban Debate. Today, for the first time, the Supreme Court heard the bunch of petitions over the Pegasus snooping allegations, over the Pegasus surveillance target list. And all the reports, all the noise, all the politics that we've seen in the last few days has now culminated with a bunch of pleas being heard in the Supreme Court. 9 different petitioners have actually approached the Supreme Court. And while a lot of them have some common pleas for the court, some are different as well in terms of what they're focusing on. Tonight we're going to talk about these petitions. I'm going to tell you what happened in the Supreme Court and why we believe there needs to be one common uniform investigation, a large-scale nationwide investigation into this story for us to know the truth. Now let me tell you about the petitioners and what they are seeking. S.N.M. Abidi and Prem Shankar Jha, one petition that's been filed by them, are seeking the details of the contracts that the government has with foreign countries, judicial oversight mechanism to be put in place, and seeking that orders be disclosed, orders about the use of Pegasus on them. So this is one petition. Another one that's been filed by Rajya Sabha MP John Brittas. He is also seeking setting up a special investigation team to probe this matter. The third one, petition by N. Ram and Sashi Kumar, represented by Kapil Sibal, and who was one of those who presented the case today, seeks a judicial inquiry by a sitting or a retired judge. Then there is the Editors Guild of India, because there are several journalists whose names have appeared on these target lists. So the Editors Guild of India is also seeking a probe by an SIT, seeking details of contracts with foreign countries, and is also asking that orders be produced, orders that issued authorizing interception. Effectively, if interception and surveillance is authorized, they're seeking details of those orders. 5 more with similar prayers were actually filed in the court. On day 1 of the hearing, the top court also made some very interesting observations. However, this is, I must add, just a part of the conversation. What the judges ask and the lawyers representing various petitioners respond is part of that. These are some of the important things that came out. Firstly, the court asked, if the issue was first reported in 2019, then why this concern now, 2 years later? If it first emerged in 2019 that Pegasus was being used allegedly, then why now? Secondly, and perhaps a step further from this very aspect itself, is the Supreme Court asking why wasn't and why hasn't any FIR been lodged if there has been a report of a hack. Then the Supreme Court said, we read that the spyware is sold only to vetted governments, but it can be state government also. One of the questions that was asked to the lawyers. Supreme Court then said that the government of India will need to answer on that front. In fact, that's what one of the lawyers told the Supreme Court, that even then you would need the center to tell you whether they can use it or the states can using it, who's using it, not for the petitioners or their lawyers to say this. Then there was the aspect of the IT Act, and if there is scope for redressal under the IT Act, whether the individuals, the petitioners could actually use that. And of course, because there's so many petitions, PILs, various parties which are involved without the central government or government of India present, Supreme Court said that it is better that if the petitioners share their plea copies with the central government. And with this, the court was adjourned for Tuesday. So now we wait to watch what happens next week on 10th of August. But here is why many would say this is a story and a case of national interest. Firstly, of course, if there are allegations of espionage, that's extremely serious. Espionage, spying by a big entity, spying by any government, any state, not just ours, internationally by somebody across the world could be spying on our citizens, on our government, on our ministers, on our judiciary. Espionage is very serious. Secondly, many high-profile names have now emerged in this so-called target list, which is why it becomes even more important that entities like the government also should be wanting to know what's going on. Journalists, academicians, ministers, activists, their names have appeared. So that should be a reason enough for a big consolidated investigation. Recently, names of the judiciary, judicial officers, those in the registrar office of the Supreme Court, we understand, their names have also appeared. Should we not want to know why? What is this list? Is it even real? Is somebody just randomly putting up names? Are these names actually being converted into targets? Were some of them spied upon? That's essentially why we're asking the question, should there not be one nationwide probe, since there are multiple petitioners and aspects involved? I say good evening to Prasant Sugatan, technology lawyer and legal director for SFLC.in, Siddharth Luthra, former additional Solicitor General, Aarti Jairath, senior journalist, Gurdeep Singh Sapul, national spokesperson for the Congress, and Shana NC of the BJP joining me right now. Let me actually start off with Aarti Jairath on this. What is your view, Aarti Jairath, since a lot of debate or discussion today, even in the court, happened about individual FIRs and police investigations, but is there a need for a nationwide probe?
No, I completely agree with the stand that you have taken. I think, this needs a nationwide probe. And for the BJP to say that please present evidence, please present proof of, spying or tapping is a bit ridiculous, because if there was proof, then there would be no need for a probe, right? Because the proof would be there. So what we need to do is establish a few things. Number one, whether the government has indeed purchased the Pegasus spyware from NSO in Israel. That's, I think, the first and foremost question that needs to be answered. Secondly, all these names that are on the list, I think, these need to be investigated. That is there actually this kind of a list? Did any of these phones get hacked by Pegasus? And, what really surprises me, Tanvi, is that every government that is, been named in this Pegasus project, whether it is France or Israel or whatever, they have all taken the allegations and the reports really seriously. And they have all set up probes, including the US. Mind you, the US is putting pressure on Israel to set up a probe, and Israel has, agreed. France has set up a probe, Morocco has set up a probe, Hungary has set up a probe. Why is the Indian government in denial? If the Indian government is indeed, guilt-free, all they need to do is set up a probe and prove that they're guilt-free. Then, there would be no more discussion on this, right? So, yes, I think there is a very serious need for a nationwide probe. Looking into all the aspects, starting with the question of whether the Pegasus spyware was indeed purchased by the government of India or any state government.
Okay, so, one very valid argument, extremely strong argument that you made is if, internationally, various governments can order investigation, why should there not be a probe, Shana NC, by our government?
So with due respect to Aarti Jairath and yourself, India is a robust democracy that is committed to ensuring the right to privacy of all citizens as a fundamental right. In furtherance, the commitment has also been introduced in the Personal Data Protection Bill 2019 and the Information Technology Intermediary Guidelines and the Digital Media Ethics Code of 2021 to protect the personal data of individuals and to empower users of social media platforms. Now, this commitment of free speech is not just a fundamental right, but it's part of our democratic system. We have always tried to attain that the citizenry and with emphasis on culture and on open dialogue. There was a questionnaire which was sent out by the government of India indicating that these stories which are being crafted by bereft of facts with preconceived conclusions seem to be the role of the so-called investigator, prosecutor, and people trying to play jury as well. Considering all these facts, the queries that have been posed in the public domain, it is very, very clear that this is a conspiracy, and the government of India's response to the right to information application about Pegasus has been reported in the media itself and has been countered that any malicious claims about the alleged association between the government and Pegasus is untrue. In fact, I will even go to the extent of saying that the IT minister, Ashwini Vaishnav, when he spoke in Parliament on the 22nd of July, he said that no unauthorized interception by government agencies. It is important to understand that government agencies established by a certain protocol, and interception can only take place in cases of national interest, and that too with supervision from officials in central and state governments. So if all of this is out in the public domain, I don't understand what this agenda of the public of the opposition is. You just want to try and make it out to be as if though the government has done something wrong.
Actually, Shaina, neither me nor Aarti Jairath are part of any opposition party, much as you may want to believe. That's absolutely not true. Now, I want to go back to something that you said. You said these reports that have been crafted have already been, what do you mean crafted? And what is this questionnaire that the government has put out? I thought the government is supposed to give us answers, not questions. The question is what we are asking, if there is any merit in what has been put out, if there are reports that claim that at least in 10 of the cases, mobile phones that were looked into and forensically analyzed, there were traces of attempts of Pegasus being used, then what investigation has the government done to outright dismiss them as conspiracy and some kind of manufactured reports?
So you're right, I did use the word crafted, and news reports that have been crafted are a part of a fishing expedition based on conjectures, exaggerations to malign the Indian democracy and its institutes and Prime Minister Modi, which has been the agenda of a certain segment, which they're welcome to do. But government surveillance on specific people has no concrete basis and truth associated with it whatsoever. In fact, in the similar
doesn't matter.
case,
Nobody is alleging that this is government surveillance.
Just one second.
No. You are mixing the two issues up. Nobody, none of the reports have alleged or directly said that this is government snooping.
On category 1 minute, those so-called reports which were supposed to be factual vis-a-vis WhatsApp, what happened in the Indian Supreme Court? You got your answer right there. In India, there is a well-established procedure through which lawful interception of electronic communication is carried out in order for the purpose of national security only. This has been highlighted by the Prime Minister, the Home Minister, the IT Minister in Parliament on 22nd July when they talked about public emergency or interest of public safety and how the agencies are used when it comes to centre and states. All of this has come out in the public domain. So I don't understand what questions we need to answer.
Because there is
interception and electronic
there is nothing credible that has come out. No, ma'am, I disagree. There is nothing. I disagree. There is nothing credible that has come out to dismiss these reports. We will be very glad to know that nobody, not an Indian entity, not an international entity, not a private entity, not a state entity, has been spying on our people or tried to spy on our people. We'll be very glad and relieved to know no credible evidence has been given to suggest that right now. All we are doing are asking these questions for which the only way to give us credible answers would be via an investigation. You say India is a robust democracy. Are you trying to say that our friends, France and Israel, are not robust democracies of any kind? I don't know. We're not talking about China or Pakistan, who you otherwise constantly run down. These are other countries, Western countries, who believe as much in privacy, freedom of speech, and are against illegal snooping. I have other panelists who want to make a point. First up to Mr. Siddharth Luthra. Mr. Luthra, much is being said about individuals going and filing complaints versus a larger constitutional issue, and whether we can actually expect the SHO of a police station to start summoning, ministers and top government babus on such an issue.
I think the speaker before me tried to make a point which I must clarify, and I have a certain concern. The issue is not whether these are state actors or non-state actors. The issue is of privacy and breach of the law. If there is a breach of privacy and phones have been hacked or accessed, and Pegasus is not an entity which the government says is official, then surely there should be no question about not investigating this matter if citizens are aggrieved. That's the first point. And I completely, and if you remember, even on the last time I was on your show, I made this clear that eventually there are two ways to do it. One, the police agencies can themselves register an FIR on a matter like this. It's a matter of importance. They do it all the time. It's not that they don't if things are in the public domain. I can tell you there are cases where newspaper reports lead to investigations. Cases where CBI looks at the website of the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission in the US, downloads settlements which American companies have done and uses that as a basis to register FIRs in India. So let's not go down that path. The other alternative, of course, is for the aggrieved persons, for the persons who are victims, to go over and hand over their devices. And for that, I think it's time that this matter needs to be looked at from a citizen's perspective and not from a political perspective, where one party says it's an anti-government, another party says that the government's being maligned. It's not about the government. It's about individual rights. It's about the breach of privacy. It's about serious offenses that have taken place. I mean, how would we like it, anybody here, if your phone or my phone was hacked? We have a lot of personal conversations, family matters. Why should they be out in the public domain and without authority of law? So when Shaina NC talks about security of the state integrity, those are very, very limited cases. This is not that case. This is not that set of people necessarily. Lawyers are being accessed because they represent somebody. I'm a little concerned.
Yes.
I'm concerned.
Yes, and Mr. Luthra, even if there were no lawyer names present on the list, but lawyers who were speaking to judicial officers, lawyers who were speaking to high-profile clients whose names may be here, or politicians, or even judges whose names may be there. So it's the wider net. We can't limit it, Gurdeep Sapal, to simply say 300 names, maybe or not. We don't care about these 300 people. But these 300 people would have interacted maybe with 30,000 people whose privacy is also at risk.
Yes, and we will not go into the technical details and legal aspects today because we have legal luminaries here. But I'll just like to respond to what Shaina said. Yes, we are a robust democracy, and that is what we are trying to save. And how BJP is damaging it. You talked about personal data protection bill. Yes, that bill is pending since 2019. Yes, there's a JPC studying it. And the JPC has not given the report for last 2.5 years. Even after the direction from Supreme Court, that bill is still pending. And BJP has deliberately misled the country on this issue. On 22nd July, when this entire Pegasus issue came out, Tanvi, then Ms. Lekhi, who's now the minister, who was the JPC chairperson, did a press conference on BJP's platform and said that I have already submitted the report to the speaker and the bill will be passed now. And today itself, that JPC was reconstituted by filling in the vacancies. That JPC is still functioning, that report is not submitted yet, but a minister on record goes on national television in a press conference, tries to mislead the country and say that we have submitted the report. Now, what is the guilt in BJP? Why did Ms. Lekhi make a willfully wrong statement before the nation? Because they know that there's a connection between Pegasus and private data protection bill. They know it very well, and they've tried to mislead the nation. And this is what we are trying to save this country from. We are trying to save this democracy. It is not about just criminality. It is not just about privacy. Let us understand, today the phone of every person is also a bank branch. I'm using the word used by the government. Every phone is a banking branch. We do our banking transactions through our phones. And if such privacy is not safeguarded by the government of India and its bodies, then All our bank accounts, all our financial security is at peril. It is not just my conversation. It is not just the other aspects of privacy, but it is also the financial security of an individual whom this government has sold the idea of cashless transaction, of e-transactions. Everything resides on the phone. So what are you talking about? And this is what we are fighting for. It is not about 300 people. It is not about 50,000 list. It is about privacy and national security. You see, today new names have come. The registrar of Supreme Court's name is there. Now, is it not a national security issue? And will somebody go and do a FIR on behalf of registrar of Supreme Court? Or will a sitting judge inquire into the matter who has the power to summon everyone, who has the power to go deep into the issue and come out with a result? Today, what did the Chief Justice of India say? He said allegations are serious in nature if the media reports are true. Now, who will decide, who will probe the media reports are true or not? Who's going to study that? He said that the allegations are serious. We all know it is serious. It is only the government which is saying it is not serious, and it banks upon the statement given on 22nd July. It banks on the statement of IT Minister on 22nd July, which said NSO has debunked the allegation. No, what has happened after that? NSO CEO has given a statement.
Let me come in, please.
They have suspended the nations. They have NSO has suspended the nations.
Yes.
NSO has suspended the nations who they say have misused the software. NSO office has been raided by Israeli authorities.
Yes.
So a lot of the water has flown down the river Ganges since then.
Yes,
Ms. Shaina.
since
so
day
please
one.
do not rely
From
on
day one,
that
when
first
only
statement.
5% of the reportage was done, to now, where many more reports, many more names, many more authorities have now come into this controversy. Many more countries have taken action. NSO has changed its stand multiple times, ordered its own investigation. Much water has passed under the bridge. Shaina NC, yes. Before I go to Prashant, yeah.
So Mr. Rahul Gandhi made statements saying that how the Pegasus expose has been thoroughly debunked and, how his phone was being tapped. He did choose to register an FIR. Only raise this issue before the monsoon session and disrupt Parliament seems to be the only agenda of the Congress party. Forget that. The important point to note is that the Guardian only says that the number was selected as a potential target. The turn of phrase makes it sound that the Indian government had planned to hack these phones. However, the truth is far from it. It is a pertinent point to note, and please understand that in previous stories also published by The Guardian, it had itself mentioned that merely the fact that a number appears in a list does not mean that the phone was hacked or that any NSO client even intended to hack the phone. So please, let's not get into conspiracy theories because the list would be endless. If you have the IT minister on the floor of the House in Parliament saying that there is no engagement by the government of the day with Pegasus, is that not testimony enough? And if you have all these people who are only resorting
I don't think he did. I miss the statement?
I think
the statement where he said that there is no engagement with Pegasus? Did I miss that?
No.
Can I read his statement to you?
This merits a reaction.
And further, one has to also respect now that Amnesty itself has alluded
to please read the statement where he said that government has no association with Pegasus.
Amnesty.
No, please read the minister's statement where he says government has no association or transactions with Pegasus.
So I will read exactly what the IT minister said. He said, on the floor of the House, he has spoken in detail saying that there has been no unauthorized interception by government agencies.
Yes.
I quote, it is important to note that the government agencies have a well-established protocol when it comes to interception, which includes sanction and supervision from highly ranked officials in central and state governments for clear stated reasons only of national security.
Correct.
This is exactly what
How does this rule out anything that has been reported?
Now you tell me one thing. When you have all these various reports which are coming in the media, has anyone even gone back to see as many as 9,000 phones and 500 emails which were... hacked in the UPA 2 in 2013, revealed
Officially,
by an RTI. There is
officially,
no
up to this,
truth to
Tanvi.
this.
legally,
That's
officially,
why
as per order.
300
So
phones and
here
emails
is
are every
here
single
is
day by
where
the Congress
I
and
think
their
I
Yes,
need
yes.
to just make a 30-second remark. Here is where I need to distinguish the report which you are talking about. What the RTI revealed were official orders of the UPA government to carry out surveillance
Tanvi.
in these 9,000 orders, including 500 emails. Even now, the government is saying, and the IT minister says, that we only resort to 1 minute, please. Now, don't bring in don't change the goalpost, Shaina NC, and confuse me, my panelists, and my viewers. Allow me this, please.
Don't
Allow
worry,
me
I
this,
will
please.
address this, Tanvi.
This is very plain and simple. Prashant Sugatan, if I can just go across to him and just make this clear. Prashant
Sugatan,
Sugatan, at no point has the government said anything directly linked to Pegasus or their dealings with Pegasus. They've simply read out what NSO has said and said, we only do legalized surveillance. Now, legalized surveillance by itself has much space under the current legislations.
Just a minute. And Tanvi, I need to say
what?
Yes, Mr. Luthra, I'll come to you in just a
Sorry.
minute. Prashant, let Prashant make his opening remarks, then I'm coming right to you. Yeah.
In fact, what China said about the RTI request of 7,500, 9,000 orders issued by the UK government, that was filed by our organization. Now, the sad fact is we got that response in 2014. But after that, although we have made repeated requests, we haven't got any response from the government. Now, that doesn't mean that such orders are not being passed now. We only have no information about these orders. That exactly is the problem. Now, let's look at what is the kind of framework that we have. We are talking about safeguards in place. Now, these safeguards are based on the guidelines issued by the Supreme Court in 1996 in the PUCL case. 1996, that's like 25 years back, where the first mobile call was made in India, let's say 1 year before that. So we didn't even have mobile phones the way we have it now in 1996. And those are the guidelines that we are still following. The orders are issued by a secretary, by the Home Secretary. Now, if this person is going to issue 7,500, 9,000 orders per month, I mean, he won't have any other job to do. Will there be any application of the mind? And again, these orders are again reviewed by the executive. The review committee consists only of secretaries at the government level. So at no point there is any judicial intervention, there is no judicial oversight, there is no parliamentary oversight. So that is the kind of safeguard that we have. But definitely these are not safeguards at all. When these number of orders are issued every month, and this is, mind you, just the central government. Imagine all the state governments also. Imagine the number of orders that are issued. Now, till date, the government has not said anything about their involvement with Pegasus. So when this was brought out by the Wire and other media organizations, the first thing that we would have expected our government, our government, this Indian government, not the BJP government or the UPA, we would have expected our government to stand for the rights of our citizens, say that we will order an inquiry. It is the rights of our citizens at stake, their privacy rights at stake, and we need to order an inquiry. We would have expected that from the government. But instead of that, they went on the defensive. Why is that so? That is the question that we expect the government to answer. If there is no wrongdoing on the part of the government, nobody is blaming them. But let them come clean. Let's see what has happened. If there is an espionage, as you, Tanvi, that you said initially, if that is the case, then we should know. It's our phone, and when we talk about phones, it is an extension of ourselves. There are a lot of information on these phones. There is financial data, there are dating apps installed. All this information, all these transactions happen on our phone these days. That is the kind of information, it's an extension of ourselves. The phones that we use on a daily basis. We carry the phone with us wherever we go. Everything is being tracked. So if this phone somebody can gain access to these phones, it is all our information that is being hacked and surveyed. So that is definitely a serious issue which merits a national level probe. We can't fight individual FIRs. You can't expect people to go give a complaint. Yes, as Mr. Luthra rightly said, you don't even need that. Police can directly do it.
Right.
So do we really want probes at, let's say, in various states, at state level, at Thana level?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's any state which is using it or the center whether there was any illegality involved or this was all legal or there was a third party
Can I
it would
come
just
in?
be ideal for a national probe. Just 1 minute, Shaina. Siddharth Luthra wanted to comment to the earlier point that was being made. Yes, Mr. Luthra.
I also
Yes,
need to react to her statement.
just to clarify one thing, there is a mechanism by which the government or government agencies can go to a service provider and access information, and that has its own procedural safeguard under the program rules and under the Information Technology Act. Here we are talking about access by a software. So the question is, how can it possibly be within the domain of government to do that? And if it is being done, then the question is, how will it fall within the scope of the information technology rules, irrespective of who's done it, whether it is a state or it is a center or it's a private party. So prima facie, when you look at an access by a software, it's like anybody accesses your phone or my phone, hacks it. It happens. It's not that it doesn't happen. That hacking itself is an offense. And this is a clear case of hacking, nothing else. It's a simple offense. Person comes to you, says, my phone's been hacked. I don't see why the offense ought not to be examined, whether it's an inquiry to be done, investigation to be done, but it's elementary to anybody who understands the fundamentals of law.
So that's one aspect, that it looks like a hacking which needs an inquiry. The other argument that was made here, which needs to be kept in mind, that, okay, let's all agree, it wasn't our government. It wasn't any of our state governments. It wasn't the central government that was spying. All the more reason why the government should want to investigate and find out who was. I mean, at the end of the day, Shaina, maybe it's the Chinese or the Pakistanis or the Americans who are actually spying on your journalists, your judicial officers, your ministers.
Can I just make a 30-second point?
Yes, please.
One has to understand that now even Amnesty itself has alluded to the fact that the list of 50,000 numbers they claim to have access to is not an NSO list at all. They claim that they found some phones which were apparently infected with Pegasus, and then they basically assessed a list of the kind of people that might be kind of potential targets. Now, please understand that if you have this potentially hacked Rahul Gandhi phones, etc., it's a lie. And why spread this kind of impunity at a point in time one does not even know where this really came from and the authenticity of the list? While Amnesty claims to stand by the story, there are several crucial aspects which are unanswered. So you can't be wasting Parliament's time when there are such serious issues. One hand you have COVID, you have pharma issues, you have bills which are pending, and there you have the others who are only pretending to make this into some kind of a national conspiracy, which it isn't. So please, the argument of national interest is very clear, but the argument of, taking on your fundamental rights and freedom of your privacy is absolutely a concoction of few malicious minds.
I will 100% disagree with what you said.
Sure, welcome to Tanvi.
And I will give you why. And I'll tell you why. You are willing to believe a part of one statement without updating yourself on what happened after that, of what Amnesty said. Even if you do that, where clarifications from the journalists who reported it has already come, ma'am. The clarifications from the journalists who reported on that story has already come. Please update yourself unless you have decided that after a certain date in this year, you will not follow this story and stick to your ground. Shana NC, either you can speak or I can speak. I heard you out. Allow me to make my point.
Different show. The nature of the show seems to be changing today, Tanvi.
Yes, kindly allow me to complete. Shana has come on my show after a really long time. I think she's forgotten the rules of engagement on the urban debate. But Aarti Jairath, even if it is to say for the 10 phones of Indians where the Wire along with the international lab and others have managed to do their forensic analysis to say there are traces of attempts of hacking or getting into the phone, should that not be a case enough for the government? Because is this not then national interest?
Of course it is. If your own citizens' phones have been hacked, buy a spyware, it is for the government of India, for the safety and security of their citizens, to set up an investigation and look into it and find out who did the hacking. And the government's evasion, this evasiveness, that we're seeing today is only, it's only arousing suspicions. Tanvi, let's go back to the Bofors. You remember when the Bofors scam first broke. Rajiv Gandhi denied, then he lied, and ultimately the whole thing blew up in his face because he was being so evasive in the beginning. And, so this is the point. The government's evasion is what is making the government look suspicious. And, the government doesn't have to do it. The government can say, look, we had no role in it, but we, for the safety of our citizens, will order an inquiry into this to find out who's been hacking their phones. It's very, very simple. And I'm afraid, Shaina, you are lying through your teeth on everything that you've said, and you have been caught out by Tanvi again and again, and you still continue to do that. You really need to be very, very careful what you say.
The Indian government has clearly said, and as has Amnesty, that the list of 50,000 numbers that they claim to have access to is not on the NSO list at all. This is not about lie and truth. This is the bare fact. They claim that they found some phones and some people who were part of the kind of people and maybe potential targets. Is this substantive for any kind of an investigation?
Yes, I will tell you, it is.
Let me please come in.
You have no facts and you only want your
Shaina, you're
mistaken.
You're mistaken. I can only hope that the government is not this outdated on it, because when that report, which if you picked up, misunderstood what the Amnesty press release said, and it was a lost in translation kind of a mistake that the Israeli journalist who first tweeted this out himself admitted and clarified, and so did Amnesty. So kindly please update on that, and then you will know that there is no more. Amnesty itself said it is not a 50,000 number list.
The Pegasus story.
What was very suspicious is when
either we can believe NSO and Amnesty, or we don't believe them. One day we like Amnesty, the second day we don't. One day they are the biggest of the liars with a conspiracy and a propaganda against this government. Second day we want to believe them fully on what they are saying. We can't be this selective. Gurdeep Sappal, go ahead please. If you are so concerned about what is happening, why doesn't Rahul Gandhi file a complaint?
I'll come to all the points.
And why hasn't the complaint so far?
The 50,000 numbers, the wire story itself said that this is a list of HLR register. They themselves said. But today's Mr. Prem Shankar Jha's affidavit in Supreme Court mentioned that 7 phones were forensically examined. 7 phones of Indians, of which 5 were found infected. So Ms. Shaina should know that is the latest position given in an affidavit to Supreme Court of India, number 1. Number 2, it is not just Rahul Gandhi who's raising this demand. 17 parties in the parliament, 17 opposition parties, which is all opposition parties without any exception, are united asking for a debate in parliament. They are not disrupting the parliament. If you have the video of today's Rajya Sabha proceedings, where the leader of opposition, Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge, stood up and challenged the government and said that we are ready for a debate now. Please do it now. So far, government has not offered any debate. It is trying to mislead the country by saying that some parties do not want a debate. All 17 parties are united, as is Mr. Rahul Gandhi, because they know this is a matter which is more serious than his personal privacy. It's a matter of misuse of a weapon. Please know that this Pegasus spyware is classified as a weapon by Israeli government, which can only be sold by permission of Israel. This is what they said in the court of California. And this weapon is used against terrorists. And today, if you say that Rahul Gandhi is a terrorist and you did authorize snooping on him, or if you say the registrar of Supreme Court is a terrorist, or the serving colonels of army are terrorists, or the raw deputy director is a terrorist, or the the election commissioner of India is terrorist, then please, then it becomes a much larger issue. If government has done authorized snooping on all these people, using a weapon which was supposed to be used against terrorists, then this government has to go in national interest. Then it's not a matter of simple probe. Then the government has to go. And this is why the entire opposition is united today. And they are united asking for debate. They are not disrupting. The opposition for the first time says that we do not want to disrupt. We want to debate.
Yes. So
we want to debate.
So let the House proceedings continue for a couple of days, Mr. Suppal.
Said in Rajya Sabha today, and government
let the House proceedings go on for a couple of days, Mr. Suppal. And if the issues that you want to discuss don't come up for discussion and the government doesn't list them despite your notices, then it's a problem. But at least sit in the parliament, sit in the House and have a conversation. If you're going to only sloganeer until it's adjourned, it doesn't help. If you
have my response on this. Today, Mr. Kharge told in Parliament that last Thursday, he was told that Mr. Rajnath Singh will come from Central Europe and talk to him. Thursday went, Friday went, Saturday went, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Nobody from the government has approached the opposition parties asking for a discussion, asking for a negotiation, asking for a way out. They are only talking to media. None of the person in government is talking to opposition at any level. This is what is said in Parliament today, and which is a fact. So whom do we talk to? Opposition cannot go and just talk to walls there. It has to talk to somebody from the government. Government is not willing to talk. It is only interested in rushing the bills to pass.
Okay.
So it is not a question of allowing the House to run. It is a simple query. Please have a debate.
All right, since we have just in the last couple of days have this whole conversation about the Parliament logjam, I'm going to just come back to what we're discussing today, basis what also happened in the court today. Now, Prashant, a point that was also made here earlier was about legal and illegal surveillance. To what extent under our system can under our legislations, can a software like Pegasus be used legally, or does it mean that if it is being used, it has to be illegal?
The way it happens, as Mr. Luthra rightly pointed out, this is to be clearly illegal under the IT Act. This is unauthorized access. Your mobile phone will be under the definition, be categorized under the definition of a computer. So it's an illegal entry and unauthorized access to a computer device, which will be a criminal, offense under Section 66 of the Information Technology Act. So that's the kind of offense that we are talking about, the kind of issue that we're talking about. Yes, when it comes to, let's say, legal monitoring and legal surveillance, there are two provisions, one with respect to telephone tapping, that's under Rule 419A of the Telegraph Rules, and Section 69 of the IT Act as such, and the rules laid under that. Those rules specifically provide for monitoring with an order issued by the government, and then it has to go to the concerned authority. So in the case of the IT Act, it has to go to the concerned intermediary. Then you do the monitoring as such. But this is where a malware gets planted in your phone, which is clearly an unauthorized access. Whether something like that can be done, even legally, that is the question here.
So, for example, Mr. Luthra, while this was actually also being discussed in the court, the issue of whether when you put in a software or a system which constantly carries out surveillance, you will also have to do constant reviews came up. The example of Kashmir was cited to say, okay, there we said that constant review by the government is required. So, if we say that we've installed a software like Pegasus that once goes into your system, maybe it's difficult to pull back and hence stop your surveillance, can that become an argument to say hence it's legally not possible for government to use this software, or can they at some point intercept and stop the snooping?
Let me clarify. Each order of interception is passed at the level of a committee, and normally the Home Secretary or the Chief Secretary in each state will do it. And that order is limited for a period of time and for a specific instrument or number.
Correct.
What we are finding here is something slightly distinct. It's like putting a bug in your device and then gleaning all the information, leaving it for you to analyze it at your own time, whether it's private information, whether it's financial information, whether it's professional information. So all this information is gleaned, and today technology is such that all of this can fit into almost less than a pen drive. You see the kind of phones we carry and the kind of memory they have. So all of this information is there. They have access then to if you have an iCloud or you have cloud computing, you have access to that through the software. And everything, every aspect of your life, including your private moments, can be not only discovered, but can be spied upon.
Can be watched, can be heard. Yes.
That's one of the simple reasons why we tell people, even in the confines of your bedrooms or your offices, please put a sticker on your camera when you're not using it. So that's the kind. This becomes then two problems. One, it listens and hears everything you say and do. The second problem, which is the most insidious, is that it also becomes a device to spy on you, even if you're not using the phone. And this has been, such softwares have been around for a long, long time. It's just that this is, to put it simply, as my friend said, it's clearly if it's used, it's an offense, and therefore we need to go further. I have only one thing which I must add. I find that I was noticing on your screen on a different point that, there's the opposition blocks, the government wants debate to go on. I think as a citizen, somebody needs to ask, we expect Parliament to do its business and to give us our laws. Recently, there was a law yesterday passed through, which just rushed through because everybody was screaming and shouting. Now, that's not what we want. Right. As a citizen, we are looking at Parliament and we are looking at government to give us direction to protect our rights.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Legislations and about, half a dozen of them in each of the houses have been passed without barely any conversation taking place. And I think effectively what you said, just 1 minute, Mr. Suppal, what Mr. Luthra, you pointed out that, legally the Home Secretary or whoever is the designated authority gives permission for surveillance for a time-bound period. Now, with softwares like Pegasus, there is really no reversal. Once it's in the system, it's in the system. Then you can get the past, the present, and you can continue for however long in the future. And you can watch and you can hear, you can get into every aspect of the phone, not just the phone calls, whether they are data calls or voice calls. Yes, Prashant, you wanted to add
to this.
I'm coming to just a bit. Yeah. Prashant Sugatan first, then Gurdeep Suppal.
Siddharth said, no, I don't want to make a political point.
Okay.
I want to add to what Mr. Siddharth said. There's also a third thing that can be done. You see, in Bhima Koregaon case, the papers, unauthorized papers were planted in the laptop of Mr. Rona Wilson by this virus. And this laptop was given to a Massachusetts-based company called Arsenal Consulting. It did the forensic on it and found that indeed these papers, these documents were planted in his laptop through his WhatsApp, and these documents were then presented by police in the court, saying that Rona Wilson is a terror accused. And one of the letters among this was also related to suspected murder plan of the Prime Minister of India. So it is not just about privacy, it is not just about getting the camera, unauthorized operation of the camera, but also any material.
Yes, you're right.
So it could also
be used to plant things in your phone. The instance example that you're talking about is, what the defendants in that case got a third party to do as an investigation that still has to be ratified by the court, but they have submitted in the court. You're right there. Yes, Prashant Sugatan, last word to you.
Yes. On the limited point of review that you asked, there is a provision in the rules which provides for a review committee. But the problem here is, again, this is all the executive. This is again a review committee consisting of only the secretary level officers. So there is, even though, and that again, it has to be done once in 2 months. So when we have, let's say, around 7,500, 9,000 orders being issued per month, and this is being reviewed by a committee, that's around, let's say, maybe 18,000, 20,000 orders being reviewed by a committee, what sort of review can we expect from this committee? That definitely is an issue.
And that is an existing issue in the existing framework on how it can be used, misused, or problematically used, which also at some point will have to be looked at. I'm completely out of time, but yes, Shaina, in the last 30 seconds to you, since you wanted to make a point.
Our
And
commitment
5
to
seconds
free
to me.
speech as a
Yeah.
fundamental right is the cornerstone of Indian democratic systems. We have always strived to attain an informed citizenry with the emphasis on culture of an open dialogue. But I do want to state that the questionnaire sent by the government of India indicates that the story has been crafted, and this is not the only one. There are a lot of cases, and it is not only bereft of facts, but also founded on preconceived conclusions. You cannot try to play the role of investigator, prosecutor, and jury. It's
Well,
just not on.
I would be the first one to gladly believe what you're saying as long as you give me the evidence for it. And I'm not talking about the part where you claim that the government stands for freedom of speech and privacy. That's fine. But I'm talking about the part where you should get rid of all of our doubts by doing an investigation and presenting evidence to say, look, this was a conspiracy by Amnesty, by The Wire, or whoever else you think actually concocted these lists, sat, looked at various events that have happened in 2018-19, took out the names that would be relevant, created this one list, a worldwide list of 50,000 numbers, and then wrote story after story after story. If you say all of that is manufactured, we'll be glad and relieved to know so, but as long as you present us the evidence, not just by your claims, but with evidence. Completely out of time. Thank you to all of our panelists for joining us on this conversation. Well, no matter what we say here, and no matter what now the government says, or the opposition says, or journalists and legal officers, activists, academicians say, it is now going to be about what the Supreme Court says, because 9 different sets of petitioners with the arguments of privacy, with the arguments of constitutionality, with the arguments of espionage, the arguments of illegal surveillance, have gone to the Supreme Court, and they seek some transparency from the government, some answers from the government, an investigation, whether it's Supreme Court monitor or any other court monitor, or a judicial investigation, or that by the government. But they seek answers to the questions that many have now been asking for over a month. But the government refuses to respond. We will see what happens in the Supreme Court next. Thank you for joining us.